Morning everybody, I'm Miss Fit Mum and today I'm coming on to talk to you a bit about Cervical Screening Awareness Week, and we've got a special guest with us today as well, Destiny, who is going to talk to us a little bit about her battle with cervical cancer. I just wanted to start the talk with a bit of information, some facts. I'll wait for a few more people to join on. Good morning. So I'm so used to saying good morning. Good morning. It's not good morning. And we're not doing a workout. It is good evening. And we're not doing a workout. We are going to talk today. It's National Cervical Screening Awareness Week. You might have seen I've done a couple of posts already about cervical screening. We've got a cervical screening challenge for the week, the little bingo card that people can still get involved in. It's all about raising awareness for people to go and get their cervical screening test. Hello, good evening. I myself had abnormal cells before. I've had something called thermal loop diathermy. Look, I'm getting the dip in. It hasn't happened before. This way. Right, I'll keep an eye on the dip in. I've had abnormal cells before. I've had them removed via thermal loop. It's a very common thing to have done. But I just want to share with you first, before we invite Destiny on, who's coming on to talk to us a little bit about her journey with cervical cancer. But just wanted to share some facts with you about how common HPV is. I don't even know if you know what HPV is, but cervical screening is used to detect HPV and abnormal cells, and it's a sexually transmitted sexually transmitted virus that 8 in 10 people will get at some point in their life. So it's very, very, very common. People think of sexually transmitted virus or disease or infection as something dirty, as something that means they've had lots of partners, multiple partners, but it doesn't. It can lay dormant. You might not even realise you've got it. And not all the facts are known about HPV. There's over 200 different variants. And it's 13 that are linked to cancer. So I'm just going off a few notes that I've used off of Joe's cervical screening website and off of the NHS to share some statistics and facts. So 9 out of 10 of those with HPV will get rid of it within 2 years using our body's own immune system. However, not enough is known about reinfection. So if one partner and the other partner has HPV, there's not enough known to know about reinfection. There is more studies being done all the time. Having a cervical screening test isn't about curing cancer, it's about preventing it. Okay, so it's about early detection. Using condoms can help reduce the risk of HPV, but still it is not 100% because it is skin to skin contact, how it is transmitted. And the HPV vaccine was brought in. I was just a little bit too old for it, but they are giving HPV vaccines now to under 25s and a certain year in school. I think it's year 8. And that protects against 70% of HPV variants. There's no way to completely avoid HPV, and that is why it is so important to remember to get your cervical screening test, because there is no way to 100% completely prevent it unless you're going to avoid complete skin-to-skin contact with people. And it's a very easy and simple procedure, okay? If you're worried about being embarrassed, these people who are doing your cervical screening test have done it a million times. Half of the population have the same private bits as you, and they are not one bit bothered or looking even at what it is down there. Trust me, I used to be a beautician. I used to do waxing. I never really took much notice. Okay. So I just wanted to share a few facts, and I'm going to ask Destiny to join us in a minute and share a little bit about her battle with cervical cancer, just to give you some further knowledge and insight as to how she got to the stage where she was diagnosed and the treatment that she went through. Someone just said here, I had the HPV vaccine, but I'm waiting to have another smear test this year to find out if my HPV has gone or not. Yeah, it's worthwhile noting that the HPV vaccine only protects against 70%. So even if you've had the HPV vaccine, it's still important to get your cervical screening test because it is not 100%. So I'm just going to find Destiny on here. There she is. I'm going to invite you on, Destiny. Hopefully it should come. If it doesn't, let me know in the comments. Hey, beautiful.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm good.
Good.
Now I can see you.
Oh, fantastic. Well, we met recently at a photo shoot, didn't we?
We did. Yes. With the amazing
We've managed.
Liza.
Yes, indeed. And it was so nice just to meet you and like how much courage you have and your journey, where you've been, you know, what you've been through and where you want to go to as well. You know, not only have you sort of battled something tremendous, but you're now looking to go and smash goals.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
So I've got a few questions. Let it flow how you want it to flow.
Sure.
You know, talk to us about your journey. It's just about sharing your story, raising awareness. So how old are you, first of all?
So I'm just,
if you don't mind me asking.
No, just turned 29. I was diagnosed a month after my 28th birthday. So I'd had one smear test when I was 25, which was done about 2 months before I turned 25, so it was March. And my second smear test just before I turned 28 was meant to be in March 2020, but because of the pandemic, it got cancelled. So I'd only actually ever, so I have a lot of people message me saying like, you know, asking about smear tests. Actually, my experience of smear testing, I've only ever had one. So I have very small amount of experience. And that one smear test that I had when I was 25 was 100% completely normal. There was no abnormal cells detected, and I did not have the HPV virus detected in that smear test in 2017.
Okay, so you didn't have the second one. The second one was cancelled.
The second one was cancelled, but by that point anyway, I was examined 2 months after that point. So by that time, you know, I'd already had a tumor. So even if it would have maybe have caught it like 2 months before, but it was already too late for me anyway. So the fact that I kind of had symptoms, but was always putting it down to other things, which we'll talk about later, that was really the main thing for me. So yeah, the smear test would have helped detect it a whole 2 months earlier, but even still, people get quite fixated on the fact that it's apparently a slow growing tumor or, you know, cancer cells. But I never had abnormal cells 3 years ago. So within 3 years, I've gone from no abnormal cells to a 7-centimeter tumor. So it is almost like, yes, the screening is really important, but also just knowing what's normal for you and not ignoring symptoms and getting some sort of examination when you are worried.
Mm-hmm. And what symptoms was it that you had?
So for me, it started off with around January time. I first started noticing it, like, obviously, was abnormal bleeding, so bleeding in between my periods. I'd been on the pill and never had any issues. It was the same pill since I was, 15. So to then start getting abnormal bleeding in between periods, to me, that should have been the biggest alarm bell. But yet again, I'm a nurse, I work long shifts, sleep can sometimes be a bit disruptive, working hard in the gym. So I just put it down to probably stress, nothing to worry about. It was around that same time that I started having bleeding after sex. Yet again, been with the same partner for a long time, never experienced that. Yet again, pushed it to the back of my head. It was around February time that I thought, this has been going on for a couple of months now and I'm noticing it a lot more than what I was before. But that's okay. I've got my smear next month. I'll just wait another month. It's fine. Don't really want to rock up to the doctors with these problems. Yet again, I'm guilty of it. Didn't really want to investigate it. And it wasn't until they rung me up and said, I'm really sorry, we're having to cancel all routine appointments because of the pandemic, is when I said, oh, well, I am a little bit concerned. So I was looking forward to having this smear to put my mind at rest, because I'm having this abnormal bleeding. I had a phone call back the next day. They said, it's probably nothing. I wouldn't be worried. You're very low risk for cervical cancer. And we'll see you, this is what they said, we'll see you in 6 months' time when the pandemic's done with and we start doing smears again. So I left it and was like, fine. And then, unfortunately for me, I had COVID in March. So yet again, the bleeding got worse. I was stressed. I was very unwell. And I just put it down to the fact that my body was really run down. I had this horrible virus that no one knew anything about. And that's when the bizarre stuff started happening, in terms of I really couldn't get to see a doctor. I was really unwell with COVID. And back then, well, obviously we know a lot more about COVID now, but back then there was very little information. We didn't really know much about it. So I had all sorts of doctors saying to me, or maybe these are like secondary symptoms to the COVID virus. We just don't really know. So yet again, I still was in contact with my GP about my abnormal bleeding. But yet again, I wasn't able to go in and see anyone face to face. It wasn't until May, I was unwell for pretty much for the whole month with COVID. And it was around beginning of May that I started getting a really unusual discharge as well as the bleeding. And yet again, never had anything like that. So this was really alarming to me. So spoke to a nurse who said, okay, fine, we'll do some blood tests, make sure everything's okay. We'll do some swabs. But yet again, you can't be seen by anyone. This all has to be done at home. So I did all the swabs. Nothing came back. They were all clear. They put me on a course of antibiotics just to see whether that helped clear. Nothing. Had blood tests. Yet again, some aspects of my blood tests were abnormal, but they said, yet again, because I had been positive with COVID, weren't sure if that was related. And I asked at that point to be referred to a gynecologist, and they said that they weren't able to do that. And which was the hard part for me, that I had these symptoms, but I just couldn't physically be seen by anyone. My GP definitely wouldn't see me. And it wasn't until then I had to put up with this for a whole month of really not knowing what was happening, and being very unwell, that it wasn't until then, beginning of June, that it's really hard for me to explain. I posted a couple of days ago about what I classed as like a black jelly-like cell that passed out of me. So when the beginning of June, I was bleeding so heavily one evening that I thought maybe I was having a miscarriage. I've never experienced anything like this before. And part of when the blood was coming out was a black jelly-like symptom. And
like a clot.
I had only ever seen that once before. I'm a cancer nurse, and I'd seen it once before in a patient that had a tumor growing out of his eye. And as soon as I saw it and I smelt it, and I was like, this is disgusting, this is not right. And I went to A&E that night, and they were absolutely amazed. They were like, how have you not been seen with your symptoms, with your history? And yet again, I think, even though we are coming out the other side of like the whole pandemic and COVID and stuff, there are still a lot of GPs that are hiding behind the COVID excuse. And that's why like I'm such a big like advocate for this, that even me as a nurse, I knew deep down something was wrong, but I just physically couldn't get seen. And I think I contacted my GP 8 times with the same symptoms, and every time they were sort of ignored and pushed back and said, we can't see you. Whereas really by the 3rd time they should have had me in. So, and all of these symptoms, I had never experienced anything like that before. Like I said, there was no other real explanation other than there was something wrong, but I put it to the back of my mind because I understood, I'm working the NHS. I didn't want to put extra strain on the NHS during the pandemic. Yeah. But actually then the result of it was that I then needed to have 3 months of treatment and had a lot more care that maybe could have been prevented. But it's hard to tell whether even in January when I first had the symptoms, how far it was. It's very hard to tell, but it's just one of them things that really, now I look back on it, I'm like, why did I wait? Why did I not insist? Why did I not take myself to A&E sooner? But you just don't at the time, because you think it's going to be nothing. You always think, oh, I'm too young to have cancer. I'm too healthy. I'm a nurse. Like, it wouldn't happen to me. And then it really can happen to anyone.
I think it's quite easy to ignore ourselves. You know, we are the best people to understand our bodies and what's normal for us.
Yeah.
And if something is not right, I think you've got to keep pushing, haven't you? But it's just like,
Absolutely.
it's
And
just
not all doctors, but I do still feel that a lot of doctors are still very uneducated in women's health, and
100%.
especially when it comes to, they seem to find it a very easy excuse. If you say you have any abnormal bleeding or anything that's not right down there, they just go, oh, it's stress. Oh, it's stress. The
Or
old school.
the amount of people that have had on different contraceptives as well,
Yeah,
that said, oh, you've just got to get used to the
yeah,
contraceptive, you know, you've just got, you know, there's some changes, you've just got to bear with it, you know, you've got to see it out. And it's just like, but this time is precious, you
it is.
know, those months is, you know, the point of, you know, how far is it going to go? You know, and it is, you know, terribly
Yeah,
scary. And, you know, in your case, you know, completely,
yeah,
you know, unreal that you had to get to the point where, you know, you're being diagnosed with, you know,
yeah.
how big did you say the tumor
So
was?
by the time I took myself to A&E that night and she examined me, the doctor said that my tumor was the size of a tennis ball.
Wow.
And then when I went and had my scan the next couple of weeks, it they did the official test and it was 7 centimeters. So a fairly, considering it is classed as a very slow growing tumor, that was a fairly good sized tumor for somebody that had a completely clear normal smear test only 3 years prior to that.
100%. And so talk me through the next bit. So obviously you get the diagnosis, which I can only imagine, you know, completely, you know, set you
Yeah.
back, didn't really know what to do with yourself. I mean, I can't even imagine the feeling.
So I
But
remember, so it's actually a year tomorrow is the day that I got my official diagnosis. And as crazy as it sounds, I remember doing loads of research before I went for this appointment. So I knew for certain that it was going to need treatment,
it
but I,
seems that way that we have to self-diagnose. It's
yeah,
crazy.
and I'd already sort of got in my head, but actually hearing them words and hearing someone say, you need to have chemotherapy, the first thing that I went through my head was, am I going to lose my hair? And as you know, shallow as that sounds,
No, not
it
at
was the
all.
first thing that I thought. And I was like, God, chemo, like, you know, I give chemo day in, day out at work. I know it's not a very nice thing. Um, and yeah, that was the first thing. So she said to me that I needed to have chemotherapy and radiation, and they give them together. And really, I didn't know anything about radiation. It's not something I do in my hospital, so I had very little, you know, knowledge of it. Which then, and I said to her, well, do I need to have surgery? Do you need to try and remove any of the tumor? And she said, no, it's not the standard protocol to try and remove the tumor of that size. They have, I think it's like 2 or 3 centimeters. If it's under that, they can give you a hysterectomy. Anything more than that, they can't. So straight away I went, oh, okay, so does that mean I can still have children? And like, she kind of looked at me and was like, no, that's not going to happen now. And I was like, oh, but I can freeze my eggs, because yet again, done my research, was like, yeah, I've got time, I can freeze my eggs. And she just said to me, with the test that they had done on the tumor, it came back a grade 3, which means it's highly aggressive. So that's probably why my tumor had grown so quickly. And her words were just, I highly recommend that you do not delay treatment. If we don't start treatment within the next couple of weeks, you probably won't be here to see your next birthday. So having eggs frozen somewhere is not going to benefit you in the long run. And I remember actually that being harder to accept than the fact that I needed to undergo the treatment. The cancer, the treatment, yeah, is hard, but I knew I was going to come out of it. Whereas the fact that I will never now be able to have children is probably something that I have to kind of deal with for the rest of my life. And like even today at work, someone said to me, I had a picture on my phone of my nephew, and someone said to me, "Oh, is that your son?" And I was just there like, no. And it's so hard, like you just kind of try and brush off the conversation. Even the day at our photo shoot, we were shooting with the other girl, and she said to me, because obviously you had to rush off to do the school run, and she said to me, "Oh, do you need to rush off to do the school run if you've got children?" And I was just there like, no. Like you don't even know what to say, like, because you just think the last thing I want to do is then bring down the mood and be like, well, no, actually I can't have children now, you know. So you just try and brush it off, but deep down inside, every time someone says that to you, it really, really hurts. And I can go on for the rest of my life and not have to ever tell anyone that I've had cancer. Like I don't have to mention that, but moving forward in my life, I'm always going to be constantly reminded that I can't have children, because that is a very common question that us females get asked in, you know, in any sense, you know, any conversation, you know, everyone always sort of says, oh, you know, how old are you? Oh, you're gonna have children. Yeah. And then you kind of, you know, and without even going into the fact that I'm single and I've got to move forward, you know, I'm not even 30 and I've got to navigate dating and telling someone, like, when's the appropriate time to tell someone that you can't have children, because, you know, it's all them sort of aspects of your life that you think, I could go on, like the cancer side of things, as crazy as it sounds, the cancer side of things was easy. It was the fact that this has got a lifelong effect on, you know, on my life forever, that's the hardest thing to move forward with. So, and that's the thing that you have to live with. And so as soon as she told me that, I just thought, do you know what? And, you know, I can get through this. You know, that was the hardest thing for her to, like, to have to explain to me. Anything else after that was going to be easy. Don't get me wrong, the 3 months I had chemotherapy, so I had 6 weeks of chemotherapy, which was just once a week. In order to save my hair, I wore like a cold cap. So basically it was like a frozen swimming cap that stopped your hair from falling out. And for me, it worked amazingly. Like, I'm so blessed to have been given that chance to save my hair. And it worked amazingly. And during that first 6 weeks, yes, the chemo was hard. But then on reflection, now looking back on it, the second 6 weeks when I had to go in daily for radiotherapy, that is the hardest thing I've ever had to get through. And
so obviously, I mean, I'm not sure how many people know about obviously chemotherapy, but it's a drip, isn't it, into your arm? And obviously it can make you feel very, very poorly. And I think a lot of people associate cancer treatment with chemotherapy, and they understand, and you, like you said, the first thing you think of is going bald, and you know, but I suppose, you know, even myself, you know, in terms of radiotherapy, and yourself, you know, I don't know much about it, you know, obviously you didn't beforehand, so tell us a little bit about that part of your
I'll just
treatment.
quickly go back to like the chemotherapy. So literally most standard cancer treatments involves chemotherapy. You straight away associate going bald. And I found that was the hard part for me, not losing my hair. As much as I'm so happy I didn't, everyone then sort of looks at you like, are you lying? Do you really have cancer? Are you really going in for chemo? Because I didn't lose my hair. And on the flip side, everyone said, oh my God, you look so well. You don't look like you've got cancer. You don't look unwell. And deep down inside, so the best way I can describe it for me anyway was like, you know, when so basically I would say it's a mixture of the worst hangover you've ever had and plus the worst flu. So, you know, you've got the sickness, you are, you know, everything you sort of look at, smell, your taste, everything I ate tasted like metal. It was horrible. I felt sick at everything. My smell, I was really sensitive to any smell. So you had that aspect of things where you didn't eat or drink for days. And then on top of that, your body literally felt like it'd been hit by a truck. So you had no energy whatsoever. You were tired. Like my mum used to give me foot massages just to try and help with the pain. But you can't pinpoint, like when you say to people, it was just painful, and someone goes, but where was it hurting? And you're like, everywhere, head to toe, your whole body just ached. And everyone is different, but generally that is the general sort of feeling of the chemotherapy. So yes, I didn't lose my hair on my head. I lost some eyebrows, I lost some eyelashes, I lost body hair, But because I didn't physically look that unwell, people felt that I was doing really well, but actually deep down. And then that's when the radiotherapy started. So for me, my treatment plan was radiotherapy every single day, Monday to Friday for 6 weeks. So, you know, that was a full-time job, going into hospital, having that done. And the longer it went on for, the worse you felt. So if anyone's ever had, you know, a CT scan, an MRI scan, even really an X-ray, it's pretty much the same concept. You lay on a bed, nothing touches you. And it was amazing because when I first went in, I was like, is it meant to zap me? Am I meant to see some lasers? Am I meant to see anything? You literally lay on a bed and the machine goes around you. And it's almost like you want to be like, how is this working? How is this doing anything to you? For me, yet again, doesn't happen to everyone, but for me, I got my side effects very, very quickly from the radiation. Some women go through radiation, have very little radiation effects. For me, it happened very quickly, which meant the 6 weeks became very hard and challenging at the end. So yet again, depends where you're having radiation, how you are. Lucky for me, I didn't, but some ladies get horrendous skin burns, which I can, or men and women, which I can imagine. I think the breast cancer ladies get a lot of the skin damage.
Seen it on the neck before.
On the neck, yes, and I can only imagine how painful that is. For me, having the radiation down in the pelvis area, basically I got told there's a 50-50 chance you're either going to get damage to your bladder or damage to your bowels, because there's no way that we can get it targeted just at the cervix. It is going to go. I didn't luckily get any damage to my bladder. However, I got a lot of radiation damage to my bowels, which yet again, I can only describe as really, really bad, like IBS symptoms. So I suffered pretty much from day one of radiation with horrendous diarrhea, bloating, pain. Like the only way I can describe it is like, it feels like when I go toilet, it's like burning fire sensation, and there's absolutely nothing they can do to help it. Like even the strongest pain relief wouldn't help. Yet again, sickness, even though you don't associate it, like the chemotherapy, everyone associates it with the sickness and stuff, but even the radiation made you feel sick. And for me, it was exhausting. It tired me out. My mum's got pictures of me waiting to go in, and I'd fallen asleep in the car because I just couldn't stay. You know, we would be sat in a coffee shop waiting to go in, and I'd be asleep basically like over my coffee because I was so tired. The tiredness from the treatment, like you just can't prepare yourself for it. And that went on for 6 weeks. So dragging yourself in every single day, being in pain, everything like that, and
knowing what's coming as well.
Knowing what's coming every week, and the weekends, yet again, you know, you didn't have enough time to recover. It got to a stage where just walking up a flight of stairs, I got out of breath. I was exhausted. And like I said, I had a lot of side effects from the radiation. So for me, actually, I lost a lot of weight during treatment because I just physically couldn't keep the food in. Every time I ate, it just came out, and it just got to a point where I would say to my mum, I don't want to eat anymore because every time I eat, it comes out, and which is very painful. And I know the girls that I've spoken to who have the damage to their bladder. Like I said, I didn't have that, but the pain that they got when passing urine, stuff like that sounds very similar. So, you know, it's kind of like a which one do you want to get sort of situation. Yeah. And yet again, you know, I'm 6 months in remission, and I'm still being investigated now for my stomach issues because they still haven't resolved. So even though I finished treatment, it's still an ongoing battle. You know, it got to a stage where like I wouldn't even want to leave the house because I didn't know how far away I could be from a toilet or anything like that. So, you know, yet again, you finish treatment, but these side effects stay with you. The sickness stayed with me for probably about 8 weeks after. The tiredness, I'm still tired now. I saw my consultant 2 weeks ago, and she said it can take like 2 years to recover from treatment. And I was like, you know, you wouldn't think it. You would think that your body just bounced back. So for me, it's just been trying to slowly get back. Yeah, baby
I'm sure it's the fact that you need to slow down a little bit. And, you know, you are you know, you like to train, you
Yeah.
want to train, and you know, you want to do bikini competing again.
Yeah.
And you know, it must be hard sometimes, maybe if you're tired to.
Yeah. And it's just that sort of mentality. I mean, I can sleep 12 hours straight through the night and still need a nap during the day because I'm that tired. And
It's
I'm a nurse.
crazy.
I've ran off 3-4 hours sleeping on a night shift, you know, for years. I'm not that type of person to sleep that long, but now, you know, my body needs that sleep, my body needs that rest, my body needs the good food. You know, I always took care of myself before, but I take even more care of myself now, because I'm like, my body is screaming out that it needs a rest. I need to rest. Or, you know, I'm just going to go bed. It doesn't matter that it's 8 o'clock. I'm going to bed, you know, whereas before I'd be like, no, you know, you need to push through, have a coffee, get on with things. But, you know, it was a mental battle as well. So yet again, I've said this quite a lot before, like my fitness background, my competing background. I think when you're into fitness, like yourself, you wake up in the morning, you snooze your alarm, you don't want to get up and do it, but you know you're going to get up and do it. You force yourself to do it. Not
Yeah.
every day we wake up going, yes. There are some days that you wake up like, yes, I can smash this. But having that sort of positive mental attitude, having that self-discipline. No one, my mum couldn't physically drag me in to have treatment. My mum couldn't have done that. You know, I'm bigger than my mum. She couldn't have done that. For me, I had to force myself to go in. And that's where my fitness background made me like a very strong person to be able to get through this. And it's something that I always fall back on, that I'm like, okay, I'm having a really bad day today, but it's not going to be forever. Tomorrow's going to be a better day. And I feel like that's the mentality that you have. Like, you might go to the gym or do a home workout or something, or you might just not do a workout that day. And you
Yeah.
just go, okay, fair enough. That was a rubbish day. Tomorrow I'll have a much better day. Like, sometimes you just need to have that sort of
Keep
mental,
trying.
yeah,
And
yeah,
keep going,
exactly.
keep trying, and keep
Yeah,
doing what you can do. You do what you can with what you got, and
with
you know,
exactly that. And
that's all
as
you
long
can
as,
do.
we always say you're ticking boxes every day, as long as you're doing something every day, whether that be something small or something big, you know. And that was the same with my treatment, that I had to force myself every day to get up and go in and have that treatment. And, you know, it was probably the, you know, probably week 10, week 11 mark that was the hardest for me. And I just remember just saying, like, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, I don't want to do treatment. This is too much. I can't do it anymore. And it was so difficult to force myself to go in, but I did, because I knew that the outcome otherwise, you know, like we always say with the fitness side of things, you're not going to get the results unless you put the work in. And it's the same
100%.
thing. I'm not going to get the result I want if I don't go in and have the treatment. So a lot of, you know, my like positive like outlook on things, and my, you know, dedication to fitness and everything like that got me through the treatment. So I definitely, you know, look back on all them years that I really didn't want to go to the gym. You know, I haven't always been into fitness, you know, it's still a fairly new thing for me. So I used all them days to be like, right, I can do this. You know, I trained to do a marathon a few years ago, and I remember being like, I'm never going to do it because I can't run that far. I've done
Yeah.
it. And it's the same mentality then, that I was like, right, I've got to get up every day and do that training. I've got to put that work in. And it's the same thing. To get through these, you have to just be strong, like mentally as well as physically.
Yeah. And so now, are you back to work? Are you
Yeah. So
reduced
I
hours, I hope?
yeah. So I was got the all clear in December,
Yeah.
and but because of, yet again, because of COVID, worked in my favor this time. So when you have treatment, it wipes out your immune system. So I was extremely high risk. My immune system, we, you know, neutrophil count is what I always go on about. So my neutrophil count was very low for a very long time afterwards. It took a long time for my body to recover. So I wasn't actually technically allowed to go back to work until April, when the shielding finished and my immune system had recovered. And it was, I was working from home. So as a nurse, that was really strange, because that's not really
Mm.
something we do. But I worked from home, and I'm now back at work on the ward. This is my second week back. I am on reduced hours, and it's really, really, really hard. I don't think I sort of realised, even though I was being active at home. I was doing my home workouts, I was going for walks and stuff, but actually physically being on the ward, like today I did a 6-hour shift and I fell asleep on the train home. I was exhausted. By like the late afternoon, like all my work colleagues were like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm just really tired now." Like, I don't think I sort of anticipated how, like, I thought I was doing really well, but that's
You are
not real.
doing really
I'm
well.
doing really well,
You
but
are.
in my own bubble world. Now I'm back in the
Yeah,
real
but your
world.
expectations
Yeah,
is, you know, to
yeah,
be as it was.
yeah,
And
of course. And it's the same with training. So I've gone, I was working out at home. I went back to the gym April the 12th when we were allowed back. And yet again, I had a massive shock then that I was like, so I was doing really well at home. And now I'm back in the gym. I realized I'm not that good anymore. I'm back down to the starting point. But it's just going to take time. So I am back at work. It's very, very strange. Now being a nurse, but with, so like, you know, without saying too much, you know, today there was a patient and they were starting radiotherapy and they were like, I'm really worried. I don't really know what it was. And I was like, well, I can sit there and talk to you about it now because I've had it and I can tell you that there's no laser beams, doesn't hurt you. You know, stuff like that. It just makes me such a different person. Never saying I was a bad nurse before, but it's made me such a better nurse. And like, you know, yet again, like today, I went out of my way to sort of make sure that a patient was not in pain, because when I was
you've
on
got very lucky patients.
when I was on the ward, I was left, you know, they just said to me, "There's no one that can fix that machine, tough, you got to put up with it." And I was like, "What do you mean there's no one to fix the machine? It was in the middle of the night and I had no pain relief. I was on a morphine pump and it broke." And they just said, "Tough, there's nothing we can do." And I just remember how I just felt horrendous. And I just thought, is that what they think of me? And like, now I've gone back to work, I'm just like, no, like, even if it's something really, really small, I'm going to go out of my way to make sure that all my patients never feel like that, because I felt like crap, basically, thinking I felt worthless, that they really didn't care about me. And it was the same with the sickness. Like today, my patient was like, "Oh, I feel a little bit sick." And I was like, right, I'll get anti-sickness, you know, literally like rammed it down their throat. Because yet again, I had to fight for
You've
weeks
been there
to get what I knew was right and what I deserved. And I knew how crap I felt. I can't imagine how a 4-year-old feels when they're going through treatment, you know,
not
and not being able
understanding
to,
it as well.
And I just think, you know, so now going back to work, yeah, like I said, you know, I'd like to think I was never a crap nurse before, but going back to work now, I can relate so much more to them. And I'm like, yeah, I know this really, really sucks. I know you probably feel really, really, really rubbish. So I'm going to try and go out of my way to make you feel a bit better. Like my patient today did not want to go down to have their magic sleep. So we got them an electric car and let them drive down in the electric car. And I was like, I wouldn't have had patience for that before. I would have just been like, no, get down, we'll go in. Whereas now I'm like, yeah, I can imagine it's a bit scary for him, actually. You know, he's 4 years old. He doesn't really know what's going on.
Yeah. Oh, you're an angel. You're an absolute angel. It's gone dark all of a sudden, hasn't it?
Yeah, I know, the sun found.
No, you're an absolute angel, honestly. And obviously you've set up your page now and you're doing so much work to try and raise awareness, aren't you, for people? And so, I mean, in terms of obviously smear tests and things like that, you know, in terms of sort of advice to other people, you know, in terms of, you know, symptoms, what advice would you give to people?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously at the moment the campaign this week is you know, don't miss your cervical screening. Absolutely can vouch for that. And like I said, I posted a post up the other day and said, if I had the choice now of either having a smear test every single day for the rest of my life or to go through what I've gone through, I would choose a smear test every day. Yes, I completely understand. It's embarrassing. No one wants to go and have it done. Completely understand. It can be a little bit uncomfortable. It's not the most pleasant thing, but if I told you what I had to go through, you would happily have a smear test. So I just think
I think from just listening to what you've been through, we're all about to having a smear test.
The most important thing is do not miss your 3-yearly, because that's the most important thing. Having that little bit of, you know, early detection is key. I'm sure your experience, you know, I've spoken to loads of women that have had abnormal sperm cells removed. Yeah, that is worrying. That is very scary. But actually, if you hadn't have had your smear and you hadn't have had that done, imagine the worst case scenario if you that hadn't been detected. If you
Yeah.
missed this one smear in 6 years' time, the outcome could be so different. But I think for me, and you know, I've done a lot of work with other like cervical cancer girls and stuff like that. And for us, we all have these symptoms. We all have the abnormal bleeding. Or okay, 9 out of 10 of us have the abnormal bleeding. We all have the bleeding after sex or pain during sex, pain after sex. We all had, you know, the unusual discharge or something, you know, something, there was a warning sign that we all ignored. And I think that's like the key take home message for me is that even if you go, you know, for your 3 yearly smear or you only had it a year ago and it was fine, but now you've got these symptoms, don't sort of rule it out and say, oh no, but my smear last year was fine. Because like I said, I went from nothing, absolutely nothing, to a full-blown tumor within 3 years. So I think knowing your body, like I said, knowing your body, knowing what's normal, and kind of, I don't want to use the word, but like kind of being pushy for yourself. So if you go to one GP, if you go to one GP and they kind of disregard it, ring up the next day and say, oh, could I get in to see someone else? Or, you know, go to a different clinic. Yet again, I keep trying to say to people, sexual health clinics, and everyone goes, I'm not going to one of them. And I go, okay, fine, call it a women's health clinic with a section for men if you want, because everyone, you know, we shouldn't be embarrassed. If you're concerned, if you've got bleeding and you go to your GP, or you've got discharge and you go to your GP and they fob you off, get yourself an appointment at the sexual health clinic. They'll happily examine you down there because that's their job. And
you've got to manage upwards. You really do, because as much as like this is not every doctor, of course, you know, but as well, you know, they have got a lot of strain on them, and you know, everyone appreciates that, everyone understands that. However, you know, when it comes to yourself individually, you've got to manage upwards, and you've got to almost expect to be fobbed off, because they've got to churn through their clients. They've got a list. They've got a list that they've got to meet.
Absolutely.
You've got to expect to be fobbed off, and go prepared. Go prepared with no. I always go with my diagnosis and who I want to be referred to.
And I always think, even though it might not seem important at the time, if you do ever have these symptoms, even if it might just be a little bit of spotting or something like that, try and document it as soon as you notice it. Because yet again, I now look back and I'm like, well, did I have it before January? The only time I noticed it was January. But actually, I might have had symptoms way before that and I just ignored it and didn't put it down to anything. So just remember that these things are not normal. Yeah, GPs, they'll say it's down to the pill, give it time. It's your diet change. Oh, you just started exercising, or you just started a new diet, or you just started a new job, you know. And I just think it's just knowing what's normal for you and then pushing forward. I can just read that someone said about the send you the home kits. I know it is so I've had this discussion so many times, and to do with like the home kits, whether this be the smear home testing or any other home testing, but if you have symptoms, they should not send you a home test. It's a bit like, let's say, the COVID. Everyone seems to understand the COVID stuff, so it's the best way to. If you have symptoms, you need to go and have a proper face-to-face test. If you have no symptoms and you're just doing it as a routine, then the home tests are fine. And it's the same with the COVID test. So, and like I know it's really hard to kind of put your foot down, but yet again, they might try and fob you off. They'll say to you, oh, I'll send you a home testing kit. And then that's when you've got to say, no, I have symptoms. I need to be examined. And it is hard. It's hard to say that. Even I found that hard to say that. But now looking back, I wish I did it sooner.
It's knowing and having the confidence to say it, I think, as well, isn't it? It's, you know, you just expect that doctor knows best. But no, we know ourselves best. Better than anybody, you know. And I mean, in terms of myself, I've had abnormal cells. I had the thermal loop diathermy, and since then I've had a negative test as part of my own bingo chart that I did this week. Part of my thing was to book on, and I got a test booked on, and I had a phone call today actually to say, actually, you don't need a test. Your test is not due till next year. And I said, okay, well, I have had abnormal cells before. I've only had one negative after. Is that normal? And she said, yes, that's normal. I was like, okay. And I thought to myself, I'm going to ask Destiny.
So unfortunately, the rules have changed a lot within the last year. So after abnormal cells being removed, or abnormal cells being detected or the HPV virus being detected, they used to test you yearly.
Yes,
Apparently,
which is what I was first told.
which is what, yeah, I only found out because my sister had abnormal cells removed 6 months ago. She went and had her like 6 month checkup, and I said to her then, oh yeah, it's yearly, and she was like, no, they told me 3 yearly, and then she got the letter through to say it's back to 3 yearly. So
Just
I
keep
have
an eye out for symptoms.
keep your eye out for symptoms. That's literally, and as painful as this makes, I can't even believe I have to say this, but private. If you
Yeah.
are concerned at all, pay to go private. A smear test privately is probably, I don't know, 100 quid or something. If you've had abnormal cells, you know, I would consider having it done. For some reason, and it's the same now with the smear test itself. The smear tests don't test for abnormal cells now. They only test for the HPV virus.
Okay, so when we go in for our cervical screening, so our smear test,
Yeah,
it tests for HPV
yeah,
only. Okay,
only.
so when do they? Okay,
Only if the HPV virus is detected, then they
then
will
they look for
send your
abnormal
sample
cells.
off for further testing. But
Right.
if you don't have the HPV virus, they will not send off your testing
It's
for further
crazy when
testing.
it's so common.
Why they've changed it, I have no idea, because I seem to feel like there's, whether it's just because I'm more vocal about it and I'm more in this sort of bubble now, but I feel like so many more women are coming back with abnormal cells and needing them, you know, removed. So why are we pulling back on the
Surely we should be
detection?
pushing forward.
We should be. I think everyone should be tested yearly.
So sorry, I'm pulling on your knowledge here. So the sexual health clinics, if you are worried, have any symptoms, can you go there freely for a smear test or?
So they won't technically call it a smear test.
Yeah,
If you have any symptoms, you will go to a sexual health clinic. They will send swabs and they will do a physical examination.
yeah,
A physical examination, 9 times out of 10, the trained nurse would see if your cervix was inflamed, red, if there was any oozing, if there was any
yeah.
discharge coming from it, which then would trigger them to straight away refer you to a gynecologist. So it seems a bit of a long way to do it, but if you've got symptoms or any concerns, go to a sexual health clinic, because the only way they can do their test is by physically looking.
Yeah.
So they have to do that, whereas a GP wouldn't necessarily do that. They would try and beat around the bush. So by doing that, you're kind of jumping over the first hurdle, and they will look, and they will send normal swabs. So they will do the whole STI screening, but they will also send for other sort of like viral infections. And then they would refer you to a gynecologist, who then would do the further testing that you needed.
Something else as well, I was doing obviously a bit of research before our chat tonight, was about the reinfection, because it's something that I was always, I always wondered, because obviously HPV is so common.
Yeah.
They don't actually know if you have it and your partner have it, if you just keep on reinfecting each other.
So exactly in your case, you have the HPV virus, you've now had one clear, but you're now going to have 3 years until your next screening. How do we know whether that HPV virus is going to come back? Yet again, they say it lies dormant in your body. So yet again, you've had that treatment, but it could come back again. So, and exactly what one of the questions was about the vaccine. I had the vaccine. So,
you did have the HPV
I
vaccine
did.
then?
I
Because
had
it's
the vaccine.
70%, isn't it? So it's not even full
I
cover.
was the first year for the rollout at my school. So we were the first ones. And yet again, at that time, I was whatever age, had no idea what it was. I just got told it's something to do with cancer and it will stop you getting cancer in the future. Had it and never thought anything of it. It wasn't obviously until I was diagnosed that was one of the questions. And I was like, check through my medical records, but I'm pretty sure I had something when I was around that age group, 12, 13 or whatever it was, year 8. I was like, I had something at school and they told me it was something to do with cancer, and I had it. And so yet again, we can't fall into, yet again, the best thing to relate it to is the COVID vaccine. So we're all getting vaccinated for COVID. Doesn't mean you can't catch it. It just means you're less likely to catch it. And it's the same thing with the HPV virus. But like I say, 9 out of 10 people, whatever it is, 8 out of 10 people have the HPV virus. and it causes minimal to no problems. It's just the unfortunate people that it will then lead on to these horrible abnormal cells and cancer.
I'm grateful as well about the raising awareness of the HPV, because it wasn't, I mean, it was 2019 that I was diagnosed. And when they said HPV and then they said sexually transmitted virus, you go, oh,
yeah,
because you just like that. The first thing that goes through your head is dirty, multiple partners.
Yeah.
Someone's going to think I'm a you know, this or
yeah,
that, you know, and
exactly.
you think of all these things, you think sexually transmitted virus, oh my god, that's awful, but
yeah.
it is like, you know, it's so common.
So the way I always say it is, you could have one sexual partner once your whole life and have HPV.
Yeah.
So it's not a reflection on how many partners, how many times, anything, whether you're clean, dirty, whether you've been checked out. It makes no difference whatsoever. And I always remember when I first started this Instagram page, probably within the first week, I had another woman message me and was like, oh my god, you're so brave to do this page. And I was like, oh, okay, like abnormally, like you're really brave. And she was like, I haven't even told my family that I've got cervical cancer because I'm too ashamed, because it was caused by a sexually transmitted disease. And I was like, and as soon as I said that, my heart broke for her. And I was like, no, this is not right. Like, so yes, it is unfortunate, but
unless you do not have any sexual activity, that's your only 100%
that's the
assurance.
only way that you will. Exactly that. And like we said, you could have one sexual partner. It is transmitted through sexual contact or skin to skin contact, as you've said. So, you know,
even condoms don't completely 100% stop it.
But for, you know, the majority of the public that have, you know, that's what I said to people. No, I'm 29 years old. I'm not ashamed to say that I have been sexually active in my life. And I think most of us can say that with a partner at one stage. So, you know, to say that it's all this, but like I said, I still now to this day get people message me like, oh, you know, does this mean my partner's been cheating on me? I've got the HPV virus or I've only ever been with him. And I'm like, no, it doesn't, because he might have had it for 10 years before being with you. You know, it's one of them things that, like you say, it can lay dormant for years and years and years. It can cause no problems to the majority of us. So it's just education, and that's why I try. 100%. Unfortunately for me, because my last smear never detected HPV, I still to this day don't know whether I was HPV positive or not. So it's very hard for me to sort of say, you know, one way or another, but the chances are I probably was. But yet again, it's not something that I think anyone should be afraid to talk about. And, you know, I think
as well, the education is very important for the other side of the relationship, because if someone is diagnosed with having HPV and then you're faced with questions from your partner, you know, you've got a sexually transmitted virus, you know, how have you got a sexually transmitted virus? What have you done?
What have you done?
Do you know what I mean? And I think there's a lack of education on that.
If it's in between, so like you say, if your last smear was completely normal and you've been with that same partner, then you've got a new HPV positive, there are going to be them questions. But like I said, I think as soon as I direct people to the page and I'm like, right, read all this information, it's a bit overwhelming, but the information you need to pick out is that, like I said, it can lay dormant in your body for years. It doesn't matter, you know, your partner, you could only have one partner, doesn't mean they've cheated or anything like that. It might just be that they had it and it lay dormant in their body. And like I said to people, you know, if you think about cold sores and stuff, yet again, how many times as a child, I know my mum did, if I ever came home with a cold sore, my mum would go, oh, who have you been kissing? And I'm like, no one. And like now, how old-fashioned is that? We know that cold sores, like for me, I get cold sores when I'm stressed. I must have that virus, the cold sore virus or whatever, in my body. And whenever it just flares up every now and then. And it's the same, like that's the way to look at it. Like I said, back in the days, that was the thing, that everyone thought you got a cold sore from kissing someone else with a cold sore or whatever. Whereas now we know that you don't have, I haven't kissed anyone, yet I can still come up with a cold sore out of nowhere. because I have the virus in my body. So that's another way I think, you know, it's just a lack of education. I knew nothing about this when I was younger. Even now, year 8, you know, they give the vaccine, but do they actually explain what it's for? And, you know, I had to sort of have quite like a serious conversation with my nephew. So they rolled out the vaccine to boys and girls now, which I think is really good.
Fantastic.
So yet again, to try and educate, to try and get more people, you know, men need to take responsibility as well, because they could have the HPV virus and pass it on to their partner in the future. So us having the vaccine,
it can cause penile cancer as well, can't
throat
it?
cancer.
Yes,
as well.
throat, mouth, penile. Yeah, I think even one of them was head and neck.
Yeah, it can, because any like your lymph nodes and stuff. So
yeah.
I think that's really important. You know, I had to have, you know, a conversation that I didn't particularly want to have with my 12-year-old nephew, but I had to explain to him, you know, this HPV virus can make you very unwell, and that's why I ended up with cancer most likely, is because of this virus. So you know, we need to actually explain that. Whereas I said to him, "What do you think the vaccine's for?" And he goes, "Oh, they didn't really tell us. They just told us it will stop us, you know, something in the future." And I was like, well, that's not really a good enough reason. Like, you need to explain to people. And I know sometimes it is hard, and I know there's been lots of discussions, but I think I got told men don't always get symptoms.
I think it can be the case that men and women can not experience symptoms at first.
Loads of women
don't even know they've got
it. From the HPV virus itself, I don't think you get any symptoms. I think
it's only if it develops.
It's only if it develops into abnormal cells, that's when you get the abnormal bleeding, the discharge, the pain. So I think that probably is true.
Yeah.
Because men wouldn't then go on to, well, I don't know what.
Well, even when I just had the HPV, and obviously, you know, I didn't have any symptoms whatsoever. No. Obviously, it hadn't developed into anything else, which is the amazing reason, you know, to have the screening.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we've got about 3 minutes before it's going to tell me it's going to cut off. So Destiny, you are an absolute angel. I cannot even imagine what you've had to go through, but you know, before we go, I just want to sort of end on a high, because I know you've got some amazing positives ahead of you, you know, what you're trying to do now with your competing and the fitness side of things. So you know, obviously there is a lot of, you know, basically you've been through a lot of, you know, crap, and you've had a lot of hard times, but you're coming out, look at you, you're still smiling, you've still got that fight in your belly, and you're just someone that really, really, really inspires me, you know, and just makes me think when times are hard, you know, look at what, you know, Destiny's been through and come out the other side, and she's still fighting. And, you know, so tell us a little bit.
Like I say, no, thank you. Like, you just have to, like I said, my outlook now on life has changed. Like, crap happens, it's fine, like, move on, it's fine, we're all still here, aren't we? Like, that's the key thing. And I think, like, with this whole, you know, raising awareness and stuff, I always say this, that if I can bring some positive out of this really negative situation, it was that I can help raise awareness and spread the word. And, you know, my inbox is always open for anyone that has any questions or any concerns or anything like that. You know, I'm always happy to chat through anything, because I know that when I was diagnosed, I felt so alone, and I was like, I have no one to talk to. How can I get through this? And I always say this, it's a club you never want to be part of, but once you are in that club, believe me, you meet the most incredible people. And when I say this from my heart, that when I look at my other friends and what they're going through, I look up to them and I inspire to be them, because they are so strong what they're going through. And I'm like down here on, like, I've got the easy road compared to what they're going through right now. So for me, I have a lot of people that I look up to who are going through similar things. And hopefully, like I say, I'm just trying to show a really positive outcome from this, that I'm using this, like I say, my comeback show, I'm going to get back into, I did the shoot with Liza. I just want to try and bring really, like, positive outcome to this, rather than, you know, saying I had cancer, it ruined my life. I'm trying to say, well, I had cancer and I'm trying to I'm fighting back, and I'm trying to take whatever positive there is from this, I'm going to find it.
Yeah, and well, like I said, I can't imagine it, but you've definitely pulled every tiny bit of positive that you could from it, and
Yeah, we're
your
clutching
smile
on.
and
We're clutching
grace.
on.
Yeah, but I mean, it's powerful. It really is. And if anyone could be an advocate for, promoting, this as a cause, obviously there's charities behind it, and I know you sort of work with a number of different
Yeah.
organisations, but wow, if anyone can promote it and put a positive spin on it, it's you. And
No,
yeah,
thank you for having me on. And obviously, like I said, this week is all about the cervical screening and just trying to get the awareness out there again.
of course, if there's anything, is there anything that we can do to help with you with sharing anything in terms of the cervical screening, in terms of, is it just sharing posts, talking
It
to
is.
each
It's
other,
just, and
talking
like
openly?
talking about it, talking to your friends, your family. Not having it a taboo subject. As long as we're talking about it, it will trigger one person to go, oh, actually, yeah, no, I haven't booked mine. Yeah, mine's overdue. I'm gonna go. Or yeah, like the more I talk about it, the more people are like, actually, do you know what? I have a bit of abnormal bleeding after sex. Never thought anything of it, and then they go and get checked. Just making it a normal conversation, I think, is how we're gonna tackle this in the future.
Yeah,
Talking about it,
normalize
being
normal.
honest is, yeah, make it normal and not have this big scary HPV virus hanging over us when everyone's embarrassed. Like, it's not embarrassing, it's normal. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, thank you, Destiny, thank you so
No, thank you
much.
so much for having me
And
on.
no, thank you for coming. And hopefully our paths will cross again, and we'll
I'm
meet in
sure they
person
will.
again. That would be lovely. And yeah, love you millions. Thank you so much for coming
No,
on. We'll
thank you so
save
much.
the live so people can watch it back at a later stage as well.
That's amazing.
And
Thank you.
thank you for all the information that you've shared. I'm sure you've educated a lot of people. So appreciate you millions. Have a lovely evening, and thank you again so much.
Thank you. See you later.
Thanks. Thanks. Bye bye.
Bye.